June was a miserable virgin nerd whose only friends were the twin sisters next door. However, everything changes when both sisters develop feelings for June, leaving him no choice but to bend them over in his room every night. It all started on the day June got introduced to twin sisters Rumi and Naori, who had just moved next door, and they instantly became friends. At first, they simply enjoyed each other's company, but as the days turned into weeks, they grew a lot closer, and soon enough, Rumi started crushing on June. However, Naori was the one who shared June's love for books, so Rumi always felt left out and tried everything to get close to him. As the years passed in school, Naori once got into a fight with a wannabe baddie in her group, so Rumi pulled the chick aside to settle the beef, but she wouldn't budge. However, June took control of the situation and made them make up, and his daddy Riz turned Rumi's crush into a full-on obsession with June. However, she just couldn't bring herself to confess her feelings, so she slowly pulled herself away while Naori got even closer to June. However, after watching him bond with Naori alone for a while, she finally decided to confess and invited June out. They headed to a park where June started yapping about his latest read, while Rumi reminisced on how she fell for him. The next moment, she asked him out, saying she just wanted to experience casual dating to avoid admitting how much she loves him. Luckily, June agreed, so they made it official, and when Rumi told Naori, she seemed unbothered by it. As a result, Rumi started to really enjoy dating the boy of her dreams, going on dates and turning the school staircase into the spot for unholy activities. Eventually, though, Rumi began to see that Naori also felt something for June, and the feeling of guilt slowly ate away at Rumi. So one day, she called June to the park again to break up, surprising the ex-virgin, who immediately started asking what he did wrong. After saying that it had nothing to do with him, Rumi thanked him for all the memories they shared together and went back home to tell Naori about it. Naturally, Naori was also shocked, but Rumi insisted that it was for the best, even though she was still in love with June. She then thanked Naori for being cool about them dating in the first place, leaving Naori confused for the rest of the night, while June was still in shock. Days later, both families meet up for their yearly barbecue, and while Naori hangs around the boys to chat, Rumi chills out with the moms because trying to have a normal conversation with June right now sounds about as realistic as Sasuke becoming Hokage. Things stay peaceful for a bit until both dads start arguing about cars like they're competing for the title of NASCAR punditry, and they drag June into it as well. Naori gets tired of listening to grown men treat car brands like football clubs and decides to join the ladies instead. After the moms apologize for ending up with fast and furious fanatics, Naori notices Rumi completely forgetting how to function because she's busy staring at June. Naori then points out how similar Rumi is to their mum before heading back to the boys. The comment catches Rumi off guard, so she starts thinking about the breakup and how confused June was when she suddenly asked for it. Back then, he kept trying to figure things out, but unfortunately, Rumi had different plans. She insisted that breaking up was the only option and then immediately told him to date Naori instead. June asked why she would even want that, but Rumi kept insisting that it's for the best because Naori has spent years treating him like some rare, expensive crystal. A few days before the barbecue, Rumi woke up early, and her mom asked if she could check June's food preference for the barbecue, which she accepted so fast that the mission might as well have had a quest marker above it. After arriving at his place and greeting his parents, who were already heading out for a date, she went straight to his room and spent more than an hour watching him sleep like the creep final boss. At that point, she was basically running a wildlife documentary focused entirely on one very sleepy specimen. She almost kissed him at one point, but managed to stop herself before finally opening the blinds and forcing him to join the land of the living. While June got cleaned up in the bathroom, Rumi took over his bed and enjoyed the leftover warmth, like Superman absorbing solar energy. Once he finished getting ready and joined her, she asked about his food preference, but quickly abandoned the original mission and switched to asking why he still hadn't made any moves on Naori after their talk at the park. She reminded him once again that Naori had been obsessed with him for years, kinda maintaining a long-term subscription at this point. But June refused to go along with the plan and said that he only wanted to date her. A moment later, Rumi suddenly hugged him and had to stop herself from doing anything else, all because she wanted to prove that she was serious about pushing him towards Naori, which somehow remains the strangest matchmaking strategy ever created. Later that day, Naori wakes up and heads out to get lunch, only to discover that their dad has already helped himself to some of it. She then spends the next few minutes absolutely cooking him with words before pulling out her phone and finding a text from June asking if she wants to go watch a movie with him. Even though the request comes out of nowhere, Naori wastes absolutely no time, gets ready, heads over to June's place, and leaves with him for the theater. While watching the movie, she suddenly asks if he has ever talked to Rumi recently. The question catches him completely off guard because this guy came prepared for movies, not surprise emotional quizzes. Seeing his reaction, she tells him not to worry about it and lets the topic die right there. Once the movie ends, she suggests going somewhere with fewer people around, so they head over to the river and take a walk together. After surviving several long minutes of Naori teasing him for fun, June finally finds a bench, sits down, and decides it is now or never. He gathers whatever courage he has left and asks her out, only for Naori to reject him immediately. June's brain crashes out on the spot as she starts explaining herself with what might be one of the dumbest excuses ever invented. He tries his best to process what just happened until she finally reveals that the rejection is only a joke she's been saving for the day he asks her out. After making him suffer for absolutely no reason, she accepts his confession, agrees to be his girlfriend, and asks him for a hug. Later, she heads back home and tells Rumi that they need to talk once the dishes are done. Several minutes later, Rumi arrives at her room, and Naori explains everything that happened. Rumi congratulates her with a smile, so fake it deserves its own acting award, then immediately switches topics and starts giving workout advice. Instead of discussing feelings, she basically starts preparing emergency countermeasures so Naori does not get comfortable, gain weight, and start convincing herself that being a plus-size nerd is somehow the master plan. A few days after the barbecue, Naori goes over to June's place to read and eventually talks him into getting into bed with her. They spend several minutes talking about their favorite books and random things they like, and during the conversation, Naori realizes that June has actually paid attention to her for years. While she's been busy being obsessed with him, he's apparently been paying attention the whole time instead of running on background character settings. Realizing this, she suddenly asks him for a kiss and leans closer. Meanwhile, on the other side of this disaster, Rumi throws herself into basketball to deal with losing the guy she spent all this time pushing toward her sister. Unfortunately, sports turn out to be a lot easier than whatever strategy she was trying to cook before, because that plan somehow ends with her losing June while personally helping the relationship happen. A couple of days later, Rumi is talking with her best friend Riera on the stairs, and Riera straight up tells her that handing her boyfriend over to Naori because she feels bad is one of the dumbest plans she has ever heard. She says that June always seems more interested in Rumi anyway, but Rumi keeps defending her decision and says that it's the right thing to do because June liked Naori first. Riera ain't buying any of it, so she tells Rumi to stop acting guilty for dating a guy who liked her back and says that she should just take her love life back if June ever comes running back to her. She then admits that she has a hard time seeing Naori as some perfect angel because they're classmates. Unlike everyone else, she gets daily access to Naori's awkward behavior and has basically spent years watching her operate like a secret nerd final boss who forgot how normal conversations work. While this is going on, Naori walks in on June talking with a friend named Toyo Shige and decides to join them. Since their conversations usually end up revolving around books anyway, she's got no problem jumping in. Unfortunately for June, what starts as a normal conversation immediately turns into another session of him getting bullied for entertainment. Naori teams up with Toyo Shige and spends the next several minutes teasing him while he just sits there and deals with it. Eventually, Rumi shows up and reminds Naori that lunch break is over, saving June from further damage. After Naori leaves, Rumi asks why everyone keeps calling Toyo Shiga Professor, so June explains that the nickname actually comes from Naori, who gave it to him years ago and somehow made it stick. Meanwhile, Naori checks one of her test scores with a friend named Ririsu. The moment Ririsu finds out that Naori ranked first in English again, she immediately takes emotional damage. Since Naori never misses a chance to compare scores, she asks about Ririsu's best subject instead. The two compare results and eventually agree to settle things with math. Ririsu suggests that whoever loses should buy fast food after school, but Naori backs out and admits that she's been getting out of shape lately, because apparently becoming someone's girlfriend has already started affecting her training arc. Hearing this, Ririsu suggests karaoke instead, and after checking their math scores, Naori sends June a message letting him know that she'll not be walking home with him later. June decides to use the opportunity to hang out at Toyo Shige's place after school, a decision he starts regretting almost immediately as they reach his room. One look around is enough for June to realize that Toyo Shige is way deeper into certain rather interesting hobbies than any normal person should be. The room basically explains his entire personality before he even says anything. Toyo Shiga then offers to introduce him to some premium sauce, but June politely declines because he would rather keep whatever sanity he has left. A little later, June asks if Toyo Shige has ever liked Naori. Toyo Shige admits that he actually asked her out some time ago because he had never met someone like her before. As far as he's concerned, finding a girl who is both a nerd and attractive is kinda like finding a shiny Pokemon, so he decided to take a shot and see what happens. After explaining how Naori straight up told him no back then, Toyo Shige gets asked why he never mentioned any of this before. He says that there's not much to talk about because he gave up on her once he realized that she was interested in June instead. This completely catches June off guard, so he asks how Toyo Shige could tell that Naori liked him all this time when he only found out recently. Toyo Shige immediately starts questioning whether June is actually as slow as Phineas Cuz. From his point of view, it has been painfully obvious for years. June keeps defending himself and says that he never pays enough attention to notice because he fell for Rumi early on and still has feelings for her. Hearing that, Toyo Shige tells him to get himself together because Naori is obviously the hotter twin anyway. Unfortunately, June keeps responding with the same answer and insists that he still has feelings for Rumi. At this point, Toyo Shige is basically trying to explain the plot to a guy who somehow lives inside it. Around the same time, Rumi is busy trying to help her basketball team secure a big win. Things do not go according to plan, though, because she trips over an opponent's foot and ends up spraining her wrist. Just like that, both the game and her wrist decide to stop cooperating. Later that night, Jun comes over to their house with food from his mom, but now Ri tells him not to bother giving any to Rumi because she's not planning to eat, so he asks what happened. The parents explain that she has been hiding in her room all evening, because winning that game would have improved her chances of making the team. After hearing that, Jun heads upstairs to check on her. It doesn't take long for him to notice that she's trying way too hard to keep everything bottled up, so he tells her there's nothing wrong with crying if she feels bad. That single comment completely destroys whatever defense she's got left, and she starts crying into his shirt. Jun lets her get everything out before trying to comfort her a little more, but right at that moment, Naori shows up at the door because she also wants to check on her sister. A little later, the three of them end up eating dinner together. While talking, Naori starts noticing that Jun is acting differently around her. It is not anything huge, but something definitely feels off. The next day, they walk to school together like usual, but Jun keeps spacing out, missing her jokes, and generally acting like his brain is busy dealing with a completely different pair of hot mommy twins. Eventually, Naori assumes that she pushed things too far, apologizes, and runs ahead before the conversation can get any more awkward. Later that day, Toyoshige catches her peeking into their classroom. Since she's doing a terrible job pretending like she's not spying on Jun, he pulls her inside to talk. Naori tells him not to sugarcoat anything, so he asks if she knows who Jun's first crush is. She immediately says it has to be Rumi because that answer seems so obvious that it might as well be written on his forehead. Toyoshige then calls her dumb for missing what's been sitting right in front of her all these years. The poor girl spends years being one of the smartest students in school, only to fail the easiest question on her own love life. Meanwhile, Rumi takes Jun to the stairs because she wants to make one thing clear. She tells him that they can never end up in a situation like yesterday again because he's dating Naori now. Instead of making things simpler, Jun suddenly admits that he's in love with her. Rumi immediately starts tearing up and gets angry because this is exactly the kind of thing he should have said when they were actually together instead of saving it for the sequel. Back in the classroom, Naori finally finishes crying over her own lack of awareness and decides that she needs to fix this love triangle before it evolves into an even bigger disaster. Rumi still refuses to let Jun stay stuck on her and immediately starts trying to push him back toward Naori. She asks when he even stopped liking her in the first place, so Jun explains that he originally fell for her because he became obsessed with reaching her level. Back then, he spent ages trying to prove that he could be as smart as her, but after years of trying, he eventually accepted that she's built different and he slowly lost that original crush. He also says that getting closer to Rumi makes it easier to stop thinking about Naori. Hearing that, Rumi tells him not to worry because one day he'll probably get over her too. Jun immediately disagrees and says that it's not going to be that simple. Since the conversation is getting way too serious for her liking, Rumi suddenly starts talking about the clouds. Not long after that, she decides to get back to training. Jun asks how she's handling all of this so calmly, so she admits that it actually hurts quite a bit. Jun then thanks her for all the memories they shared when they were together and says that he'll always treasure them. A few minutes later, Jun returns to class and notices that Naori has a tear in her eye. He asks why she's crying, so she immediately blames Toyoshige and claims that he's the problem. Jun sees through the excuse almost instantly, and he apologizes to Toyoshige for having to deal with her, then asks Naori for the real reason. She then claims that an eyelash simply got stuck in her eye. Jun clearly doesn't buy it, but he lets it go. After that, they head home together, and before leaving, Naori stuffs her used napkin into Toyoshige's hand as a thank you gift for the conversation. As they walk home, Naori starts talking about a new author she recently discovered. Then she asks him to go on a proper date with her at the end of the month. The next day, Naori meets up with Ririsu for their usual nerd activities, but instead of reading, Ririsu becomes completely invested in figuring out how Naori found the confidence to ask a guy out. Naori explains that being attractive probably helps a lot when asking for things. Ririsu tells her to calm down, and she then offers a prayer for all the dummies who keep falling for Naori, before asking if she has any plans for the date. Naori admits that her biggest problem right now is finding an outfit that hides her stomach, so Ririsu tells her to stop worrying so much and focus on looking good because Jun is obviously going to notice her anyway. Later that night, Rumi finds Naori watching a romance movie and gets surprised, so she decides not to question it until Naori suddenly starts asking why girls fake coming into eternity to make their boyfriends happy. Rumi tells her to be careful and not do anything reckless, so Naori tells her that she's not planning to rush into anything with Jun anyway. After that, Naori turns off the television and announces that they'll be visiting the marine park. The next morning, Jun nearly forgets how to function when Naori shows up looking way better than he expected. He manages to recover quickly, gives her a compliment, and joins her on the train. Once they arrive at the park, Naori spends the next several minutes talking nonstop while Jun quietly survives the experience and does his best to keep a promise he made to Rumi. By the time they finally reach the aquarium, he starts relaxing and actually enjoying the date. Meanwhile, Naori becomes completely locked onto the hammerhead sharks. After a while, she tries explaining everything she knows about the sharks, but then suddenly realizes that she's been giving a full presentation to a rando. She immediately goes over to Jun and asks if he even knows what a date is supposed to be. Jun claims that he's simply giving her room to enjoy herself, but the truth is that his brain has been busy replaying old memories of Rumi. A little later, they leave the aquarium, and Naori immediately resumes talking. Not long after, she spots an interactive section featuring endangered animals and drags Jun over to see a frilled shark. While checking it out, she starts touching it and enjoying the experience until Jun tells her that the thing smells terrible. Naturally, Naori decides that the smartest response is to test that claim herself. One sniff later, she instantly regrets every decision that led to this moment and shoves her fingers toward Jun so he can suffer too. Since she dragged him into the disaster, he finally decides to get a little payback. At the same time, Rumi is busy watching her basketball team collect loss after loss and starts wishing for some kind of miracle to fix her wrist. Meanwhile, the other two finish with the aquarium and go for a walk around the park. Things are actually going pretty well until the wind suddenly gives Jun a high-definition view of her yummy buns. Naori immediately drops down onto the grass and asks if Jun sees anything. He tries denying it, but she keeps pushing until he finally admits that he saw her fresh out the oven cakes. She then asks if he's going to spend the rest of the day thinking about it. A few minutes later, they head into another building and continue talking while enjoying the view. Somewhere else, Rumi finishes watching the game, and Riera hands her a bottle of water before asking why she suddenly seems relieved. Rumi claims that she has moved on from Jun, and Riera immediately calls nonsense and keeps insisting that she's making a mistake by ignoring what she actually wants. After that, Riera gives her a hug and admits that her own relationship is becoming a mess. According to her boyfriend's drive for the plot skyrocketed after he got a taste of it the first time. Hearing that, Rumi apologizes for not paying enough attention to her friend's problems and wonders if guys really get that unhinged so easily. Back at the park, Naori and Jun get in the Ferris wheel together. While riding it, Naori finally talks about when she first started liking him. She admits that she knew about his feelings for a long time but never did anything because she's a sad coward. After confessing all that, she asks if he thinks she's a coward. Jun tells her that he basically does the exact same thing, so he can't judge her. The following evening, Jun invites her over to watch a movie. Once it finishes, Naori gets interested in reading the book version, so Jun takes her upstairs to find it. When he finally locates the book and tries handing it over, Naori suddenly pulls him onto the bed. After giving him a taste of the milk machines, she gets closer and kisses him. A moment later, she pulls back to make sure that he actually wants this, but Jun starts having doubts, and because of that, he backs away instead of making a move. Naori gives him another chance to do something, but he still refuses. So she tells him that they're not a proper couple yet. Naori sees the look on his face and reminds him that she only agreed to go out with him, not start an actual relationship. After dropping that little plot twist, she gets off the bed. Jun also gets up and asks her to explain. So she explains that she always knew that Rumi dumped him so he could end up with her instead. She also says she knew how he really felt from the start, but none of that would have changed anything because she still loved him and would have accepted him anyway. Jun is still trying to process the sudden reveal, so Naori decides to switch strategies and starts teasing him with her juicy melons, even offering to let him have a taste if he's interested in getting freaky, but Jun immediately leans back as he doesn't want to expose his Long Johnson. She says she's fine with whatever choice he makes about which girl he wants to date. Then she moves closer again just to make sure the message is delivered properly, but unfortunately, Jun backs out again. He says that he doesn't want to date either of them right now because he wants time to seriously figure out what he actually wants. Even so, he admits that he finds her really attractive, and she asks him to say it again. As soon as he repeats himself, she hugs him tightly and gets excited because she can finally have a fair fight with Rumi over him. A few hours later, Naori and Rumi are shopping for snacks at a convenience store, and Rumi gets suspicious. The whole thing feels unusual enough that she asks whether something happened with Jun. Naori tries dodging the question at first and asks if everything really has to be about him, but Rumi keeps pushing for an answer. Naori then grabs a pudding cup, takes Rumi to a bench outside, and finally tells her what happened. Naturally, Rumi is shocked after learning that Jun and Naori were never actually dating. She asks why Naori lied to everyone, but Naori tells her to stop acting innocent when she practically helped set the whole thing up in the first place. She admits that she was annoyed by the plan because it wasn't very subtle, and Naori tells Rumi to drop the big sister act. According to her, it was painfully obvious that Rumi still wanted Jun back. Rumi tries defending herself by explaining that she doesn't really understand most of Jun's hobbies and interests, but Naori refuses to accept that excuse and says that she was simply being stupid for no reason. She then asks Rumi whether the breakup had been bothering her the entire time. So Rumi explains that June always went out of his way to make her happy, even during moments when he clearly was not feeling great himself. He constantly put her first and tried to make things work no matter what. Even after hearing all that, Naori still refuses to believe that breaking up with him was the right choice. She points out that she has never needed somebody else's help to get the things she wanted, making it clear that she still thinks Rumi threw away a perfectly good relationship because of a problem that probably could have been solved by simply talking about it. The next moment, Rumi finally loses her patience and decides that she's done playing the role of the older sister. Since Naori always acts like she does not need help from anybody anyway, she figures there is no point keeping up the act. Meanwhile, June fills Toyoshige in on everything that happened, but Toyoshige completely ignores the emotional side of the story and asks if he seriously walked away from both sisters without getting freaky with either of them. June tries explaining that he genuinely cares about both girls and would never treat them like that, but Toyoshige just starts roasting him for willingly starving himself of the plot just because he wants to be a good boy. Back with the sisters, Naori accepts Rumi's decision to stop acting like the older sister. She says that the whole thing was always kind of silly anyway, since they're twins. Hearing that makes Rumi surprisingly sad because she has basically built her entire identity around being the older sister. Naori then explains that things will be easier this way. Instead of constantly worrying about each other's feelings and acting according to some self-made family rulebook, they can finally just talk to each other normally as equals. But Rumi still has trouble accepting it and apologizes for blowing up earlier. Naori says that the outburst is exactly why they need this change. Meanwhile, Toyoshige realizes that June is so buried in his feelings that he has no clue what he actually wants. So to simplify things, he asks which sister June wants to clap the most. June refuses to answer because he's still got his good guy act on, so Toyoshige responds by telling him to prepare for a future of eternal singleness. Meanwhile, Rumi is still pretending like her breakup with June was not a big deal, so Naori suddenly stands up and announces that she has not even been able to walk properly because June completely destroyed her with his Thor hammer. As she grabs the legendary plot hole to see how serious it is, Rumi begins remembering all the good times she had with June. The memories start hitting one after another, and suddenly, the breakup does not feel quite as simple as she keeps pretending. Then Naori tells her that she made the whole thing up. Rumi gets mad and tries to leave, but before she can get far, Naori starts another ridiculous story. This time, she claims that she had an intense makeout session with June until his Johnson woke up. For the second time in a row, Rumi falls for it, but Naori decides to let her off easy. The two of them finally agree to stop overcomplicating things and start acting like normal sisters again. The following morning, June meets up with both girls on the way to school. Within minutes, he finds himself trapped in another completely pointless argument, which ends with Naori reminding him that she has not given up on winning him over. June reminds her that he has already decided to stay away from romance for now and wants nothing romantic to happen with either sister. After saying that, he speeds up and starts walking ahead before the conversation can become even more awkward than it already is. Later during class, Rumi asks him to meet her at their usual spot. They head upstairs, and she immediately gets to the point. She wants to know why he was able to kiss Naori so easily when she had to spend what felt like several lifetimes building up enough relationship progress just to reach that stage. While June tries defending himself and explaining the situation elsewhere, Ririsu decides to roast Naori instead, calling her a loser for helping June and Rumi get back together instead of doing everything possible to keep him attached to her. From her perspective, Naori is basically throwing away a lead in the final minutes of the game for no reason. Naori is not worried, though, and she confidently says that she still has several advantages. Besides being his first crush, she also claims she has more cake and bigger melons than Rumi could ever hope to compete with. A few days later, Naori walks over to June's class and tells him not to even try complaining, since she already won their bet. He gets confused and asks what she's talking about, so she reminds him that he agreed to ask her out if she scored higher than him on the midterms. Then he tells her that she actually got the highest grade in class. She checks, sees it's true, and immediately threatens to report him for getting weird with her, then storms off like a weirdo. He runs after her and asks why she got mad all of a sudden, but then she spots Rumi walking by and says she wants a hug. He hesitates, so she tries to leave, but he ends up hugging her while Rumi and the whole school watch. A few minutes later, Rumi pulls him aside to ask what that was about, and he explains Naori's random tantrum, so she asks for her own hug to even things out. He does that too, then congratulates her on getting back with the basketball team. Then, out of nowhere, she asks if he knows a girl named Shiina. Later, June's just trying to chat with Toyoshige when this Shiina chick starts yelling his name even though she has no idea what he looks like. He gets up to shut down the noise, and she quickly pulls him into the hallway and asks to be his student. He remembers that Rumi said that Shiina would ask for tutoring, so he says no and tells her to find someone else, but she ignores that and promises to meet up after school. He goes back to class, and another guy named Bizuma asks if he's finally picked between Naori and Rumi. Right after that, Toyoshige tells him to go back to playing basketball and asks asks if he was lucky enough to grab Shiena's huge melons. Jun says no since he already said no to tutoring, so Toyoshige offers himself as a tutor just so he can finally get a feel of her freshly baked buns. That level of obsession makes Mizuma ask if he ever asked her out before, but Toyoshige admits that he couldn't find the guts to do it because she gave him the meanest death glare the first time he tried to talk to her. While they keep talking, Naori finishes her lunch and starts going on about needing a stable guy to take her shopping, until Ririsu brings her back to reality by asking if she has any birthday plans. Naori says that she hasn't even thought about it, so Ririsu offers to celebrate with her. Later, Rumi gets back to class and asks Mizuma if he's seen Jun anywhere, so he tells her to check the hallways and reminds her about the training session tomorrow. She promises to do her best, then heads out and thinks back to the phone call with Shiena last night, where Shiena said she needed a tutor. Since Naori wouldn't want to do it, Rumi suggested Jun, but didn't actually think Shiena would go for it. When she finally meets up with Jun to talk about it, he decides to turn Shiena down, so Rumi says that they should tell her after class, but she also tells him to make sure Naori doesn't find out. They agree that she'll definitely make a big deal out of it. Then Jun texts Ririsu to meet up. A few minutes later, Ririsu tells him to tutor Shiena so he can finally get with his first hot girl, but he refuses and says he'd rather keep his Benjamin to himself. She offers to do some digging for a birthday gift for Naori, so he agrees to tutor Shiena. Meanwhile, the girls on Rumi's basketball team congratulate her on her wrist healing. She thanks them, and they tell her that she looks way better than she did after the breakup. That surprises her since she thought none of them knew about it. All the girls take turns teasing her and reveal that they also saw her making out with Jun during one of their not-so-secret staircase meetups. She starts begging them to stop, and Kanako tries to apologize for going too far, but then she remembers all the sappy conversations Rumi had with Jun and keeps laughing at her. Later that afternoon, Rumi heads out and finds Shiena already waiting, so she asks if she skipped the last period. Shiena says it was boring and she just had to leave. Then Jun shows up suddenly and asks if they've made any plans. Shiena suggests grabbing some food, but he tries to back out, but she says she gets lonely since her parents are barely ever home. He agrees, but instead of going to a restaurant, Shiena decides to cook something at her place. Back at school, Naori leaves with Ririsu, but Ririsu says that she forgot something and begs Naori to go back with her. On the way, they run into Toyoshige, so Naori asks why he isn't with Jun, and Ririsu heads upstairs while Toyoshige tries to avoid telling her what happened during lunch. Meanwhile, Jun and Rumi walk into Shiena's huge apartment and slowly start to understand why she doesn't try with her studies. They find a place to sit, she introduces Rumi to her cat, and while Jun tries to figure out why she gave it such a weird name, she asks Rumi if she has feelings for him. Rumi immediately says no, which is clearly a lie, but Shiena accepts it and walks over to Jun. When he suddenly turns away from her ridiculously pretty face, she asks Rumi if he's the nervous type or if her huge melons are making it hard for him to concentrate. He tries to leave, but she pushes him back onto the couch and promises to make the best meal they've ever had. A few minutes later, in a restaurant, Toyoshige fully explains what happened with Shiena during lunch, so Naori spends a couple of minutes calling Shiena a shameless girl who uses her looks to get attention from dumb guys. She also wonders why Shiena would pick Jun of all people, but Toyoshige tells her not to worry since he would obviously say no to the request. Back at Shiena's place, both Jun and Rumi are completely shocked when she serves up food that looks good enough to make Gordon Ramsay quit his job. After looking around and remembering what Rumi said about her parents never being home, Jun decides to focus on why they came here and asks to see her report card after they eat. Much later, he starts walking home with Rumi and asks about her basketball practice before they hear a familiar voice and see Naori, who then asks why they're walking together so late. Rumi tells her about having dinner at Shiena's place, says it was a last-minute thing, and then talks about how nice it felt to play with Shiena's cat. Naori gets all emotional and asks why they didn't invite her, even though she knows. Naori is obsessed with cats, so Rumi calms her down with pictures and eventually decides to finish the walk home alone. When Jun turns to leave again, Naori remembers why she got upset and asks if he said yes to Shiena. He tells her yes, then claims that his reason was personal and leaves. Right after that, Naori loses her mind trying to figure out why he would ever say yes to Shiena. A couple of minutes later, Jun tries to watch a movie, but she suddenly forces his door open and he falls out of his chair. He tells his mom not to worry about it. Then Naori hears a weird sound from the movie and gets scared when she sees that it's a freaky movie. But he quickly shows her that it's actually a normal movie, before asking why she even showed up so late at night. She asks why he said yes to Shiena and pulls her skirt up to remind him that she's got all the plot right there. He tells her to put that away and says that it's not that serious. His mom brings them some food, so Naori stops and asks if they can get married so she can eat food like this every day. Then she feeds him some mango, before asking if there's really nothing going on with Shiena. He tells her again not to worry, but she still asks to come along to one of his sessions with Shiena just to be sure. The next day, after school, he meets up with Rumi to talk about it. She tells him not to worry about Naori, then asks why she got called out, so he shows her a text from Shiena asking to have the first lesson at her place again. He complains that Shiena takes forever to text back, then shows uncertainty about going to her place alone. Rumi says it's not a big deal, especially since Sheena's the one who asked him over. Later, Sheena gets home and is shocked to see him already waiting at the entrance. So she apologizes for being late and promises to make up for it with another good meal before dragging him inside. When they get to her apartment, June starts playing with her cat, so she tells him to get comfortable while she takes a shower, but he tells her to do it later, so they can start. She says that she feels gross because of the rain, so he agrees to wait while she cleans up. Meanwhile, Rumi's teammates are excited about winning a practice match against the guys, but she remembers when Sheena asked about her feelings for June and wonders why she asked. Just then, Kanako spots Naori spying on them, but Naori also notices and tries to run off. Rumi catches up to her and asks what's up, but Naori avoids answering. Rumi keeps asking, so Naori admits that she only came to see if Rumi was with June and Shiena. This makes Rumi feel bad, so she lets Naori join them at the table. But Naori refuses and keeps talking about how awful her teammates are until Rumi offers to get her favorite milkshake. Over at Sheena's place, June plays with the cat again, but then Sheena pulls up, dressed all crazy. She apologizes for not wearing makeup and runs back inside. And right after that, they finally start the lesson, but then she asks if there's someone he likes right now. He says no, asks her the same thing, and says there's no way she doesn't have a guy yet, but she claims to actually be single, and she recently got curious about someone. She tells him to guess who it is since they also go to the same school. After a few hints, June gives up and tries to keep studying, but she stops him again to ask if there's really nothing going on with Rumi. He finally tells her they used to date, and she gets surprised because she never knew, even though she was in the same class as Rumi. While they talk, Rumi walks home with Naori and asks why she was so shy at the restaurant. She says she's just not used to being around that many strangers, then asks Rumi if she's really okay with June being alone with Shiena. Rumi reminds her that June isn't even Shiena's type, but Naori says not to trust June so easily because he might be hiding something. The next afternoon, Shiena gets tired of studying and asks him to grab a snack from the cabinet, but after finding the snack drawer, he spots her trying to sneak away and rushes to stop the door from closing. He pushes it back and realizes that she's really cultured. He stares at all her collectibles before spotting one with a figurine missing. He sees that it's the spaceship from Cowboy Bebop, then asks how she got such a huge collection. Shiena explains that she turned the room into an otaku den after her parents got divorced, but she tells him not to feel bad because her parents still work together in modeling even though they're not married. She says that's why they're always away, and also why she models a lot. June apologizes for thinking that she was one of those trust fund brats who just live easily. Meanwhile, Naori wakes up to a bunch of texts from Rarisu asking to go to the mall, and she tries to say no, but then she sees that she's already waiting outside her window. Later, June also ends up at the mall with Sheena, and after searching for a while, he asks for help finding a good gift. She suggests getting something Rumi has probably wanted for a while. June thinks about it and decides what to get, but then Shiena asks why he only cares about Rumi's present. He says Naori's gift won't be a problem. She teases him about his feelings again, so he turns to leave, and she quickly grabs his arm to finish shopping for clothes. By then, Naori and Ririsu have just started looking for new plushies, then they both spot June and Shiena, so Naori quickly texts Rumi about it. Rumi reads the text, then fast forwards to the restaurant with Ririsu and Naori. Naori then asks if Rumi finally suspects Shiena. Rumi says it still doesn't prove anything, so Naori asks if she's just dumb, but Rumi insists Shiena likes someone else. Next, Naori decides to go to the next lesson so she can finally figure out the truth. The next afternoon, she shows up at the house with June, and he asks why she's dressed like a teacher, and she says it's the best way to execute her plan. A moment later, Shiena welcomes her, notices how much she likes cats, and hands her cat over to her. A few minutes later, Naori passes out on the couch, and then they hear someone knocking, so Shiena says it's probably her mom. June tries to wake Naori up. Then Shiho walks in with the huge milk machines that fed baby Shiena, immediately hugs Naori, and tells Shiena to call her brother because their dad just got back to Japan, meaning they can finally have dinner together. Hearing this, June tells Naori that they have to leave, so she makes up an excuse. While walking home, June asks if she's finally done suspecting Shiena, and she admits she feels better about her. Then he helps her with the umbrella so she can stretch properly, and she uses that chance to hold his hand for the rest of the walk home. The next day after school, Toyoshiga follows June to the mall to help pick out a gift for Rumi. He gives him some ideas and starts looking for something for Naori, too. Then he messes up by saying that she'd probably like whatever he picks, so June reminds him that Naori has always seen him as a gross creep. Around the same time, Rumi gets on the train with Reira and asks where she should put a victory charm. Reira tells her to just focus on winning since she's the first starter in their year. Rumi promises to try her best but asks for help in case she gets destroyed like before. Reira promises to support her. Then Rumi asks if she's still having guy problems. Reira says she finally told off her boyfriend for always wanting to hit the plot. Rumi gets worried since he's also a basketball player, but Reira says not to worry, cause a little fight won't affect his game. She talks about finding balance between a partner's good and bad sides, causing Rumi to realize how mature she is and admits that she's got a lot to learn. Reira tells her not to stress about her messed up love life cause she's got time. Just then, Rumi gets a text from June to meet up, hops off the train, and runs all the way to the park. She catches her breath before walking up to him and hiding how desperate she is. They talk about Shiina and how she might stop bothering him after her makeup tests. He wishes her luck on tomorrow's game, hands over the gift, and says that he had to get it a day early since she'll be busy with her game. He also asks her not to tell Naori, so she opens it, thanks him for finally getting her a better water bottle, then asks for a hug. While she fights the urge to swallow his sausage, he feels bad about not giving Naori's gift yet and says he started with her since he won't be at the game. He wishes her luck and praises all her hard work and training. She asks for a kiss like old times because she needs it to keep calm during the game. He surprisingly agrees, so they make out for a couple of minutes before she heads home. When she gets there, Naori wishes her luck too, tells her what's for dinner, and goes to her room. Rumi feels guilty about hanging out with June, so she decides to tell her. But as soon as she mentions him, Naori says to forget it, so they don't have weird tension during their birthday. At school the next day, Naori goes to check on June and ends up getting kissed on the cheek by Shiina. Luckily, Shiina realizes that it's time for another makeup test and leaves. They both decide to head out, but instead of their usual walk, Naori suggests going straight to her room. A few minutes later, she starts showing off her legs right in front of him, so he hands over her birthday gift to avoid looking. She opens it and is surprised to see the plushie she was looking at before, so he admits that she helped him pick it. She thanks him. Then he also hands over a glasses case that matches his own. She gets emotional, then asks why he went to see Rumi first if he really cares. June says that he only did it to support Rumi since he couldn't watch her game. Naori gets even more emotional and begs him to stop doing stuff behind her back. She hugs him and keeps talking about how left out she feels whenever he does something with Rumi. He remembers what Toyoshige said about avoiding his feelings for both of them, just causing more hurt. So he hugs her back and promises to never leave her out again. She gives him a little bite as punishment and promises to do worse if he ever breaks her heart again. Hours later, at Rumi's place, Naori complains about their dad's bad music taste. He defends it, so she asks June to back her up, but he can barely hear the music she's yapping about. Rumi tells him to keep his dark music away since it's their birthday. Their mom says not to bother convincing him because he's deluded himself into thinking funeral music is normal. After they celebrate Rumi's win, June puts on his sneakers to leave, and she asks if he still uses the same pair they bought together back in the day. Naori tells her to shut it because she can't stand her. June asks if she wants to come on a quick store run. She hates having to share him with Rumi, but agrees. They both tell June to start making more money because ladies should never pay when going out with a guy. The next day, Ririsu makes a small feast for Naori's birthday. After letting her brag about finally being the older one in their friendship, she opens some cakes. Ririsu reminds Naori that they hated each other just a few years ago. Back then, Naori's super smart brain had just fully turned on, so everyone got intimidated and left after a few seconds of talking to her. Ririsu was the only one who saw through all that brain power and even called her out for always wanting attention. Now, Ri admits that she never expected another geeky geek to become her best friend, then tries to explain her new plan to get June by starting a club. But Ririsu suddenly leaves to answer the door. Shaina barges in, wishes Naori a happy birthday, and shows off the gifts she brought. Naori opens a necklace and worries about the cost, but Shiina says that she designed it herself with her mom as a model. She helps Naori put on cat ears. Then Ririsu admits that she set them both up. Naori gets confused, so Ririsu explains how Shiina asked to be introduced a while ago. Since Naori already hated making new friends, Ririsu came up with the whole tutor thing and made sure to tell Rumi first, so Naori would hear about Shiina getting lessons from June and become obsessed with finding out who she is. Naori loses it and wonders how her big brain didn't notice anything. Shiina apologizes for tricking her and says that she's been desperate to get close to her for years because she absolutely adores her. Later on, they all go to watch Rumi's game. While Naori tells June all about Ririsu's schemes, Rumi realizes that there are only 5 seconds left and throws an amazing pass to her teammate. The teammate gets stuck, passes back, so Rumi goes for a 3-pointer and seals the win. Later that night, Naori shows up to her room, wishes her luck for tomorrow's game, and asks if she even remembers how she started playing. Rumi thinks back to the day at the park when Naori told her to pick a sport, and she made a bucket on her first try. Naori promises to keep rooting for her and suggests going to get good wishes from June, too. So Rumi heads out and promises to be back fast. After Rumi's clutch shot earlier in the game, things went downhill fast. She could barely make a proper pass without getting shut down by defenders, and the whole match slowly turned into one long struggle. Even while watching this happen with his own eyes, Naori kept yelling at her to get open. June eventually steps in and explains that Rumi is already doing everything she can and does not need basketball Ted Lasso, shouting from the sidelines. A little while after leaving the gym, Rumi ends up sitting at the park crying because of the response June sent after she told him they lost. The next morning at school, she thinks about calling him out to the stairs for a talk, but changes her mind before doing it. However, while heading back to class, she runs into Mizuma. Seeing how down she looks, he tells her not to blame herself for the loss because she did everything she could. He also praises her for how well she played, which surprises her. Then he keeps going until the conversation takes a turn when he admits that he's always thinking about her. Rumi initially has no idea where this is going, but Mizuma quickly clears things up by confessing that he likes her. The second those words come out, the mood changes completely. Meanwhile, Naori meets up with June to talk about her newest idea, which is starting a club. June immediately rejects it because he already hates spending extra time at school and has no interest in voluntarily extending his stay. As far as he is concerned, the final bell is a fast travel point. Toyoshige, however, likes the idea and asks whether she has anything planned already. Since she doesn't, she tells them to come up with ideas themselves. June reluctantly starts listing all the boring but necessary things that they would need to actually get a club approved. While he handles the paperwork side of things, Toyoshige starts planning which girls he would invite, so everyone kinda contributes according to their talents. Not long after that, Ryorisu and Shiina show up. The moment Shiina arrives, she immediately starts getting way too comfortable with the holy goods, so Naori tells her to stop messing around so they can focus on the club discussion. She notices June smiling and asks if he enjoys watching girls get freaky with each other. June tells her to chill because they just look like close friends. Getting back on topic, he suggests making the club some kind of research group because the school is definitely not going to approve an official club whose only purpose is existing. While all this is happening, Rumi meets up with Reira to talk about Mizuma's confession. Surprisingly, Reira barely reacts. In fact, she admits that she expected it a long time ago because of how often Mizuma tries to spend time around Rumi. This surprises Rumi, then Reira explains that maybe she should start paying more attention to how much time she spends with her guy friends. After that, she tells her to reject him because it's painfully obvious she doesn't have feelings for him. Later on, June and Naori ride the train home together. During the trip, he asks if there are other people she wants to invite into the club. Naori tells him to think of it less like an official organization and more like a place where friends can hang out together without pretending like they're planning world domination. Meanwhile, Rumi meets up with Mizuma to give him her answer. She tells him that she doesn't feel the same way about him. Mizuma takes it surprisingly well and apologizes if his confession made her uncomfortable. Then, after accepting the rejection, he asks if June is dating Naori. The question comes out of nowhere and surprises her, so he reminds her about that time they hugged in front of everyone and says that they always look pretty happy together. Rumi tells him that there's nothing wrong with two friends hanging out, so he says sorry for bringing it up and asks her on an actual date. But then, Reira shows up, so he tells her to just think about it and runs off. A few minutes later, Reira hears the whole thing and tells Rumi that he only brought up Naori and June's relationship to make his moves sound better. Rumi doesn't think he'd go that far just for a date, so Reira tells her to forget him and focus on getting with June as soon as possible. Later that night, she calls him up to ask if he still talks to Mizuma. He says yes and asks if something happened, but she asks him not to worry and hangs up, so he goes back to writing a proposal for the club. The next day, during lunch, Reira tells her to mess around with Mizuma for a bit. She says no and that she can't play games with guys like Naori. So Reira says that she should just be honest about how she feels, so he stops playing games too. A few minutes later, she calls him over to a bench and finally turns him down. He says sorry for messing up their friendship and asks if they can at least still hang out as friends. She tries to say no at first, but he keeps saying it'll be just like before, super casual. So she agrees, but says she won't hide it from anyone either. Meanwhile, June finally gets the okay from the authorities and heads back to class with Toyoshige to talk about a problem with the club room. Once they get there, he tells the girls that the only empty club room is also being claimed by some other guy who just got his club approved too. So Naori decides that she's gonna get that guy to give up the room, no matter what. Right after that, they all get on the train home with Rumi and Reira. After they get off at their stop, June asks Rumi if something's bothering her. She asks if they can talk on the phone later that night, and Naori tells her to just open the door already, so they both stop talking. Hours later, Rumi gets out of the bath and finally calls June to tell him everything about Mizuma. He's surprised that she's even telling him this and reminds her that they're not dating anymore. She gets upset and starts yelling at him for not caring. He tries to say sorry, but she starts crying hard and throws the phone down. Naori hears it and comes over to calm her down, then takes her to the living room to talk. After hearing her out, she tells Rumi to think about going out with Mizuma instead. The next day after classes, Shiina tells them not to stress about that older guy who wanted the club room. She already went to his classroom like she's about to declare war and cause a mess just to set up a meeting. June asks if they agreed on a time, so she answers that she just threatened him, or rather, told him to wait after school. So June starts freaking out because older students have different class schedules. He says that they should go to his class right now. Shiina says she's sorry because she can't come along, so Naori goes with them instead but hides behind June the whole time. Once they get to the classroom, she asks if he can do all the talking like they're negotiating a ceasefire. He says not to worry, because he already planned what to say. Then they open the door, and Reito tells them to forget about the room because his club only needs one more person to be complete. He also tells them to teach Shiina some manners. June reminds him that they already have all their members, but this Reito dude still won't budge and says that it doesn't matter since he put in his request first. June suggests running up a challenge for it, but Reito still says no and asks what's the point of of trying to inevitably lose. But when Jun says he'll join Reita's club if he loses, Reita gets pretty interested in the wager. He tells Jun that he's gonna make it a chess club and asks what game they're playing. Jun thinks about it and says chess, which kinda surprises Reito. He says that Jun's got guts, but decides that he gets to pick Jun's opponent. Jun has no choice but to agree, so Reito picks Naori and says that she can practice for a week, but she asks for 2 days instead. On the way back to class, Jun asks when she started playing chess, because she always said no whenever he asked to play before. She says her dad made her learn a long time ago, and she mostly said yes to playing as an excuse to be alone with him since he'd be teaching her. Hearing this, he decides to tell Shiena and Ryorisu, but ends up reading a text from Rumi asking to talk about the night before. Around the same time, Rumi also checks her phone to see if he replied and thinks back to her talk with Naori. After suggesting she actually go out with Mizuma, Naori said that she wouldn't even think about saying yes if she were in that situation. She told Rumi that she's only keeping Mizuma around to get a reaction out of Jun. She also said that there was no point in dragging Mizuma along since Jun's reaction already told her everything she needed to know. Just then, Kaneko shows up to snap her back to reality and asks about her talk with Mizuma the other day. The other girls start asking if she said yes to him, so Reira tells her to spill it. She admits that she turned him down, and the girls tell her to watch out for all the other girls chasing after him. Then one of them suddenly says they actually dated for a bit. Rumi asks her for all the details, so they head to a restaurant with Reira and Kaneko to talk about it. Mai explains that she basically begged Mizuma to go out with her, only to get rejected before she could even reach the part she was looking forward to. Before anyone can react, she admits that the whole thing is pretty sad. Rumi tells her not to feel bad for going after what she wanted and reminds her of all the times she practically begged Reira for help with her own love problems. Not long after, the girls start heading home together, and then Rumi gets a text from Jun asking to meet at the train station. She immediately turns him down and says that she still wants to spend more time with the girls. Later that night, Jun notices the chess lesson is dragging on and tells Naori to head home before it gets too late. She refuses and asks if she can stay over like the old days. Jun somehow gets handed the easiest win in history and still fumbles it, turning her down and going to look for a chess book instead. Then she grabs him from behind and asks why she can't stay. He admits that it would be nice, just like when she used to come over with Rumi. The second Rumi enters the conversation, Naori loses all interest and leaves. The next day, Rumi finally meets Jun at their usual spot. He starts by apologizing for how he acted on the phone, and he reminds her that Mizuma is actually his friend, explaining that since he's not her boyfriend, telling her what to do feels weird, so he just told her to do whatever she wanted. Rumi apologizes for putting him in that position and asks if he really has a problem with her meeting Mizuma. He admits that he won't exactly enjoy it, but if she's got something important to talk about, then it's fine. A little later, Rumi finds Mizuma and agrees to go out with him, but once she gets home that night, she starts stressing over what to wear. Then her mom walks in and asks if she'd rather eat dinner with her or at Jun's place since Naori is over there too. Meanwhile, Naori gets tired of her practice session getting interrupted and asks Rumi why she doesn't just go home already. Rumi says that she only wants to see how they're preparing for the match. After that, she apologizes to Jun for forgetting to stay quiet. Naori almost gets mad at him for telling Rumi about the club, but somehow manages to stop herself and acts like it was never supposed to be a secret in the first place. Early the next morning, Jun comes over to walk to school with Naori and ends up running into Rumi, who is already dressed up to meet Mizuma. They wish each other luck before she leaves, while Jun watches her go and does a terrible job pretending he's okay with it. Later, Shiena finally makes it to class and apologizes for showing up late with the snacks. Everyone forgives her, and they spend the next few minutes helping Naori polish her game. After that, Naori follows Jun to the vending machine for a quick soda break. He thanks her for putting so much work into the club. Then his phone buzzes with a message from Mizuma saying that he's serious about Rumi. He keeps looking at the text, and Naori tells him to go find Rumi since she saw the message too. Jun reminds her that everyone is supposed to be present for the chess match, but Naori tells him not to worry about that and even points him toward where Rumi probably went. Before letting him leave, she makes him promise to tell her everything later and asks for a goodbye kiss. He settles for a kiss on the cheek, but when she asks for an actual kiss, he apologizes and says he can't do that. Naori gets tired of waiting for this guy to unlock basic romance features and just grabs his face to do it herself. Meanwhile, Rumi and Mizuma arrive at a nearby park. He starts things off by asking if she has always been left-handed. She claims that she randomly decided to start using her left hand one day, while quietly leaving out the part where Naori is the reason. Mizuma then struggles to find another topic, but before he can, Rumi asks if he can just get back together with Mia. Just like that, the man finally experiences the other side of the rejection screen. To his credit, he handles it pretty well and explains that he never actually had feelings for Mia, even though he thinks she's great. He also says he understands that Rumi feels the same way about him. After that, he asks if she's having the same problem with June, and the two keep talking about their complicated mess of feelings. Back at the chess match, Naori starts playing against Reito and catches his attention with some clever moves. She asks if June taught her everything she knows, and she gets a yes. Reito admits that he's becoming more interested in him. He then starts listing all the nerd traits that they apparently have in common, basically giving June a character analysis he never asked for. A few minutes later, Reito suddenly stops the game and decides to let them keep the clubroom. Sheena immediately hugs Naori to celebrate, while Toyo Shiga asks if he's actually serious. Ririsu is even less trusting and wants some kind of written agreement so he can't pull an Uno reverse card later. Reito explains that he was never that serious about taking the room in the first place. Even so, he asks Naori to finish the game and says that's his only condition. While they continue playing, June spends the next several hours running around the neighborhood trying to find Rumi and Mizuma. After searching everywhere he can think of, he starts considering giving up. Then he decides to check the park one last time, and sure enough, he finally spots them and immediately heads over to crash the date. As soon as Mizuma sees him, he asks if June really ran all over town because of one text message. Rumi has no idea what he's talking about, but June tries to pull Mizuma aside for a private chat. Mizuma immediately shuts that down and says that anything being discussed should involve Rumi, too. With nowhere left to hide, June finally decides to be honest. He starts by apologizing to Rumi for never properly explaining how he feels. After talking about how badly the breakup hit him, he admits that he loves both her and Naori and still can't choose between them. Then he asks her to keep putting up with him until he figures things out. Rumi agrees, which is pretty much what she has been doing this entire time anyway. Mizuma, however, is completely done with this nonsense and tells her to stop accepting the bare minimum from a spineless loser who clearly enjoys having two girls waiting around for him like he's some unlockable dating sim character. June defends himself by saying that he just wants to make the right choice, so Mizuma tells him that's exactly the problem, because if his feelings were really that clear, the right choice would not require months of side quests. Even after getting hit with that combo, Rumi still defends him and says that he always shows up when it matters. Since she's clearly not changing her mind, Mizuma decides to drop it. She then asks June how he even found them when the text gave him basically nothing to work with. June sits down to recover from his cross-country speed run and explains that Naori helped him figure it out. As the two continue talking, Mizuma quietly excuses himself. Before leaving, he makes June promise to take care of Rumi, then heads out. Meanwhile, Reito finally admits defeat in the chess match. After getting Naori to at least consider playing with him again someday, she immediately rushes off to check her phone for messages. Shiina follows her along, partly to help and partly because she wants to talk about dinner since everyone is staying at her place. Later, Rumi gets home and hears from their mom that Naori is spending the night somewhere else. That gets her wondering if Naori finally gave up on June, which would be news to literally everyone. Not long after, their dad comes home from work. June joins the family for dinner while Naori and the girls dig into another one of Shiina's cooking experiments. Everything's going fine until Naori complains about the garlic. Ririsu immediately accuses her of being a suspicious succubus, who is obviously protecting her breath for activities that definitely aren't chess-related. Naori tries changing the subject, but Shiina tells her not to bother because everyone already knows she's planning some kind of big plot move on June. Back at home, June spends the evening watching a movie with Rumi's dad or his potential father-in-law. Right when things start getting interesting, Rumi drags him out to the store. Once they're outside, she starts asking questions about the day they spent together, mainly to make sure he actually enjoyed it. After buying some milk, he walks her back home. She thanks him for spending so much time with her and heads inside. A few moments later, June goes to enter his own house when Naori suddenly appears out of nowhere and nearly sends his soul into spectator mode. He immediately asks what's going on since she's supposed to be staying at Shiina's place. Naori tells him not to worry about that and simply asks if she can spend the night. He immediately grabs her by the shoulder to make sure she hasn't completely lost it. After telling her no about 50 different times, he somehow ends up letting her inside anyway. A few minutes later, they're sitting on the couch when he notices that she smells like she's been running side quests all day. She asks if he wants to take a bath, and he pretends like everything is fine because the last thing he wants is to give her another chance to start acting weird. Naori sees through that and says that it's not a big deal if he needs to clean up. Eventually, he gives in and heads for the bath after making her promise not to come in. A few minutes later, the bathroom lights suddenly go out, and June assumes that Naori is messing with him and turns around to complain, only to find her standing right there showcasing her sweet milk machines. He immediately looks away and tries to keep his deadly weapon under control while Naori keeps making his life harder for absolutely no reason. She refuses to leave at first, but eventually agrees to give him some space if he stays in the tub. While he sits there trying to survive the situation, she keeps trying to convince him to stop acting like a monk where he's meant to be acting freaky. The very next moment, he gives up and escapes the bathroom. Naori spends a few minutes reviewing another failed operation before getting dressed and meeting him in his room. Once there, she asks if they can at least sleep together. But like always, the answer from this virgin loser is no. Since that plan crashes instantly, she switches topics and asks what happened after he left school. As she starts making fun of Reito for basically being June after several years of premium geek upgrades, June jumps in to defend his fellow geek. Then Naori suddenly pushes him onto the bed, forcing him to roll over and hide his lethal weapon. When she asks why he ran out of the bathroom earlier, he explains that sometimes his legendary Johnson likes making decisions without consulting management first. Naori tells him to stop pretending like that's the real problem and says that he's actually worried about Rumi. After he admits that he doesn't want to break Rumi's trust, Naori asks if they can secretly start dating, but the virgin final boss turns that down too. Since she's run out of options, she asks for a proper kiss. This time, he finally gives in, and they end up sucking lips. The next day, he ends up telling Toyoshiga all about it at school, while Naori gives Shiina and Ririsu the full report from her side. Later that night, June's mom tells him about a surprise camping trip that both families agreed to. The second he hears that Rumi and Naori are involved, he heads straight to his room and texts both sisters about it. The next day, everyone arrives at the campsite. Most of the evening is spent talking about random stuff until the moms decide to call it a night. The dads eventually wander off to continue their drinking sessions somewhere else, leaving June stuck with the girls. As usual, since there isn't much else to do, he suggests checking out the observatory and reminds them of all the times they talked about going there before. A little later, they sit down to enjoy the view. Rumi starts talking about how she thought people could actually make shapes out of the stars, and Naori immediately reveals that she only believed that because June told her. Now somehow, this turns into another argument. June tries to calm things down, but Naori stops him and says that it's finally time for them to stop pretending like everything's fine. She starts going after Rumi for always acting like the good guy in every situation. This time, though, Rumi actually fires back and says that she only asked June out because she got tired of keeping her feelings locked away forever. Then she calls Naori pathetic for spending all her time waiting around and expecting everyone else to magically understand how she feels. Naori gets up and says that she never asked for Rumi's pity or all those sacrifices because she was perfectly fine with how things used to be. June tries stepping in again, but Rumi tells him to stay out of it. Then Naori says that she was the one who sent him after Rumi during the Mizuma date. She starts acting pretty proud of that little reveal, but Rumi slaps her and tells her to stop messing with her feelings. Naori refuses to take the blame and says that Rumi has been doing this to herself from the very beginning. Rumi then tells her to stop trying so hard to be the villain because it's starting to look desperate. That one lands directly on the weak spot. Naori immediately answers with a slap of her own, and a few seconds later, the two sisters are rolling around fighting while the stars quietly mind their own business. June rushes in to separate them and instantly gets rewarded with elbows from both sides, then a double slap sends him straight to the ground. After nearly getting all his teeth donated to charity, he expects at least a little sympathy. Instead, both girls ask how such a weak hit managed to fold him so easily. After recovering, June admits that most of this mess is his fault. Even so, he still says that he can't decide which one of them he wants to date. What he can promise is that he never wants to hurt either of them, and he asks for more time to figure things out. Surprisingly, both girls accept that, and they decide to keep competing for his heart and start by apologizing for turning him into a human punching bag. The following week, Reira shows up at the clubroom with Rumi after Ririsu specifically invited her. Naori starts acting like she doesn't want either of them there, so Ririsu reminds her that she's always wanted to play ball with them anyway. The second that gets brought up, everyone starts teasing her, and Naori denies everything while acting like she never wanted to hang out with them at all. Then Shiana reveals that she created the entire club just so she could spend more time with June. After getting exposed, Naori runs over and openly admits it. Rumi immediately grabs June's arm as well and reminds Naori that she's got no plans of giving up. And just like that, the competition for the world's most indecisive boyfriend candidate officially continues. Will June finally decide on which sister he loves, or does he want to take them both to Pound Town? Comment part 2 if you want to find out. And don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe for more videos like this.